Anthony, I want to live the resort life when I grow up.
You do live the resort life.
Hey, good point.
I'm Anthony. Welcome to No Vacancy Live. That's my friend Glenn.
You're watching the #1 show in hospitality. Hey everybody, welcome to No Vacancy Live, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast. Don't ask me, ask the folks at the International Hospitality Institute. Great to see you, Anthony. How are you, buddy?
And you're the #1 social media hotel influencer. Look at you.
Yeah, baby. I love that. So hopefully we're going to do some positive influencing today as we really go behind the scenes of KSL. And I'm really excited to talk about KSL Resorts today because they're a company that I've really admired from afar and haven't really had the chance to interview and really learn more about in this in-depth kind of way. But Anthony, before we get into speaking to Scott Dalecio, I want to remind our friends about our good friends over at Avgo. That's AAVGO.com. You got to check them out because they have got a great check-in kiosk for you. But it's not just a kiosk. It's a whole lot more services. But the best part, and Anthony, you know this, is they can speak to a human being on the other end of a screen, which I think really makes the process a lot more personal and relieves hoteliers of that stress of having to find someone to work those late night overnight shifts that sometimes people don't want to fill, right?
I started my career on the late night overnight shift. I think I'm one of the few people that are social that likes that shift.
Yeah, that is a good point. I had a buddy that used to work an overnight shift, not in a hotel, but somewhere else because he got to catch up in his reading. He got to be left alone. And for those of you who don't have somebody like that in your life, make sure you check out Avgo, AAVGO, because they've got a kiosk that's going to help save you money, save you time, increase the way that your guests love you. All right, you ready to get into a great interview today, Anthony?
I was born ready, baby.
All right, I love that. Scott Dalecio, welcome to the show, President and CEO of KSL Resorts. Great to see you, sir.
You as well. Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm standing here, not at the Camelback Lodge, which you guys own the Camelback Resort in Pennsylvania, and it's a property that I've had a chance to enjoy. Anthony, just before we went on air, was telling a story about it. For me, my story is I have twin boys, and I feel like this was back when I was doing an audio only podcast, and I had the opportunity to go up there to talk to a convention salesperson. I did a great interview, but I brought my twin boys, who were like, I think 10, 11 at the time. And we got to go on the zip lines. We got to do this mountain coaster. The water park was amazing. But the thing that they're going to remember most is that in the arcade, they won tickets and they brought home the largest box of nerds known to mankind. And we had that around our house for a lot of years. So thanks for the memory, Scott.
There you go. Glad we could help out.
Well, they have the #1 nerd dad. Now they have the biggest box of nerds.
Hey, we're an all nerd family. Don't get me started on talking about Star Trek and Star Wars, then we'll really know how nerdy I am.
How long have you guys been part of Camelback?
Oh, so we're going on our fourth kind of full season. And
okay, so what happened? Because again, I grew up in New York. So Camelback, there's 3 or 4 mountains you go to: Hunter Mountain, Camelback, a couple others, Mountain Creek, of course. What happened the last few years that it seemed like it's got kind of a little force behind it? Like what was when you took it over?
Could it be them?
What was when you took it over? What were the changes you made?
Well, we approach it from a couple of different perspectives, and philosophically, it's something that we carry through on any investment, which is try to provide a solution that's unique for that particular property.
Yeah.
So we're not trying to force in a set of brand standards. We're looking at it objectively and what's the best plan for that location. And as you know, Camelback's a pretty complex resort, busy place, lots of different amenities and elements.
So people know 560 acres in the Pocono Mountains celebrating its 60th anniversary. Please continue.
Right. And so we took a holistic approach to how do we improve overall service and take home value for the consumer? What are the capital improvements that need to be made? It's a capital intense, business, as you know. And when you've got ski run operations, you've got water parks on, outdoors, indoor water park, lots of food and beverage facilities, really bringing in some additional talent and resources, technology, and some pretty significant capital investments, the most recent of which being a major investment in the upward transportation on the mountain, which is the new ski lift, which adds capacity and more pleasurable experience for the consumer. So we're always looking at that. It's constantly being evaluated and listening to what the consumer is saying about their experience. And proud of what we're doing there. We have a good team.
You've been doing a lot of upgrades there. I'm looking forward to maybe getting a chance to do one of the new 4,000 foot zip lines. For example, you've been modernized the 450 guest rooms that you have there. Lots of new food and beverage opportunities over there. So it seems to me like you really are making a serious investment into this property in order to take it into the next decade, Scott.
We are, and let me know when you're thinking about doing that zip line. I may have to join you. I've not done it yet. The Superman lift, that's quite a ride from the top of the mountain down to the village there. But again, I think the consumers, today, and certainly through the tough times of COVID, we saw that tri-state area looking for a place to go, and we needed to provide value and safety and all those things that were important to families making that investment. There are a lot of touch points on that property. And so again, paying attention, through studying kind of through a heat map process of where people are spending their time, how they're spending money, what do they like, what do they not like, what can we improve?
So how many properties do you have, and what are some of the properties you have, other properties?
Sure. So including the Outrigger Hotel and Resort, company, about 50 total. If you exclude that, some of the key ones that we have are the Fairmont Grand Del Mar, Sheraton San Diego. We just recently, last year, purchased Silverado Resort in the Napa Valley. We've got Blue Mountain Resort, which is not too far from Camelback. We have recently also spent quite a bit of time in the central coast of California. We acquired a beautiful property called Vespera, which is right on the beach, beautiful location in Pismo Beach. And then last month announced the acquisition of Martin Resorts, a 5-property portfolio with 2 properties in Paso Robles and 3 in kind of that Pismo Beach, Avila Beach area. So those are.
Have you been involved in the resort in Long Beach? That hotel in Long Beach? That's going to be a Fairmont hotel. But were you guys poking around there though?
I've now moved to Napa, just in case anyone's curious.
Yep. Have you guys been poking around the Long Beach, California hotel?
No, not really.
Okay. I thought I remember seeing you guys somewhere on paperwork when I was working with them.
The KSL enterprise is pretty wide, so that certainly there can't speak to what involvement some of the PE guys or the credit fund had, maybe perhaps, but not on the KSL resort side.
So you've been focused on the resort side of the business for a long time. The company came into being, I think, in the early 1990s, and I think you've always gone down this route. Why these types of hotels, and why stick with those types of hotels when during that last 30 or so year period, we saw the whole birth of the giant select service industry and all of these incredible things happen, but you guys seem to be very focused on what your strategy is.
Because these are the more painful resorts, and he likes pain, apparently.
There's some truth to that. You're right. The original company, KSL Recreation Corporation, was started in 1992 by my partner Mike Shannon and his co-founder Larry Lichtschleider. And the focus was purely on recreation, hospitality, leisure. We have a little bit of roots in the golf industry, but the first acquisitions of the company in 1993 on the resort side were big, complex resorts with multiple different amenities and revenue streams. And that started with La Quinta Resort and Club and PGA West out in Southern California, and then Doral Golf Resort in Miami. What we found was there was a better and more efficient way to operate these things. They are difficult. And what we noticed that when the assets were purchased, and I was involved in that process back in the early 90s, the hotel companies wanted to talk about the hotel pieces. The golf companies wanted to talk about the golf pieces. The real estate developers wanted to talk about the real estate.
Right.
Mike and Larry and our partners with KKR really sought to understand the whole, and how could you do this better, more efficiently, and make the engine work harder and more seamlessly. And I think that's where we've been able to create some interesting experiences, generally have all the disciplines under one roof. we don't outsource a lot.
Right.
And we've been able to, build, a pattern of success there through the years. And we've been blessed and fortunate to have some phenomenal, iconic, resorts through the years, whether it be Grove Park Inn, Arizona Biltmore, and Phoenix, Hotel Del Coronado, built in the late 1800s, Homestead Resort in Hot Springs, Virginia, really unique, classic properties. And we've always prided ourselves on being caretakers in time. These places are going to be here long after we are. And so our job is to improve them and continue to maintain their relevancy for the future. And eventually monetize that. And hopefully they continue their success. And we've had a good track record of that.
And in a lot of the locations, it was always difficult to find employment or employees. And now I'd imagine it's harder than ever, especially in the ski resort that you have. I'd imagine that's been difficult. I'd imagine your salaries have gone up probably 20, 30%. And it's been really, really challenging. Or maybe you solved all your problems and I'm wrong.
We certainly haven't solved all the challenges, but we have invested pretty significantly in our TBO program, our talent-based organization, and invested in talent. And what we've been able to do is kind of incubate and cross-pollinate our talent across the system. And so when I look at, let's just say, the leadership level across the enterprise,
right?
Well, 1 in 4 executives, managers, assistant managers have been with us previously in another location. And so they're coming back to the company. So unlike some of the brands, when a property may sell, well, the brand's still there, right? And so those people are in that brand system for a long time. Well, when we sell a property, let's take a Hotel Del Coronado or a Grove Park Inn, we're selling off a piece of that talent as well, right? Because generally we're selling these things unencumbered.
Right.
So the fact that we have these executives wanting to come back and work in our system and look for the next opportunity, I think is a testament to our success there. Still a lot of work to do. We have a high performance mentor program where we're building talent at the lower level and trying to get people really engaged in the industry. As you know, it's a 24/7 business. It takes a certain DNA and character for people to want to work in our business and really engage in it and being successful.
Yeah, and it's so funny because since it's in my blood. I don't understand that concept of it's difficult for people to engage in this business. I've said it many times. I'm working on, as Glenn knows, I'm working on, I'm going to get a pen because I have an idea. I'm working on several different projects to kind of help us kind of bring people into this industry. And as I'm explaining to young people, I just had a kid I was mentoring out in California, in Vegas at the Forbes event, and he's in it. He loves it. But like when they were talking to people outside, they said, well, I tried it and it's not for me. I don't understand how the sexiest, coolest business, and you can do everything from being a lion tamer to being a lifeguard to running beautiful resorts, development, real estate, everything. Like, I don't know how people don't love this business. And I mean that sincerely. I don't understand.
I think I know. My answer would be that it looks like a fun business, but then when you get into it and you realize, oh, there's actual work that we have to do as well. I think that probably affects people's longevity in the business. Scott, I see you smiling from that.
Well, no, Anthony, look, I'm with you. It's been my life, right? My career for the last 35 plus years, and grew up in the food and beverage industry in various different roles. And but I do think, look, there's a light at the end of the tunnel here. I do think we're seeing progress and some growth in the talent and a little bit better recruiting experience across this. And it varies by market. Some of these, as you said, the resorts are pretty regional. So you've got to come up with some creative solutions and create a package that's interesting enough for the employees and solve some of their issues and flex scheduling.
And get those employees that don't look like the three of us into the executive offices and get them excited and get different communities excited about this industry, because I've talked to a lot of kids and I didn't know what the hotel business was. I didn't know this existed. I have no idea what this is. So it's really, really important because you go to, you meet a lot of people and a lot of times their uncle or their brother or their father was involved in the industry, whether it be in real estate or general manager. So when you reach out to different communities and different schools, you really see that people are like, oh, I can make money, because that's the number one thing they say. You can't make money in the hotel business. And I'm like, have you lost your mind? You can make a lot of money in the hotel business. But, and when you talk about work, Glenn, I think that's so over-explained. You have to work hard in this business. You have to work hard as a school
in
teacher.
anything. Well,
You have to work hard as you know what's hard? Being a police officer, being a fireman, being a teacher.
Right.
Anything that you're good at, except you happen to be good at podcasting, but you don't really work hard at it. It's just natural.
Well, what I really mean is not that you have to work hard as opposed to other things. It's just that the work is not what you expected when you're looking at it from the glitz and glamour from the outside. We made the industry look sexy because it is sexy, but you don't see how the sausage is made. So I think that people get an erroneous perception of that, where maybe with some other career tracks, they don't necessarily see that particular thing. But I don't know. I'm just a podcast host. Scott, what do you think?
Look, I think all of us in the industry bear that responsibility of, educating, the younger talent and providing those opportunities, and being an ambassador for what we do and why it is a valuable career and why it is interesting and it's diverse. And to your point, Anthony, I mean, you can do whatever you want. I mean, we tell that to our team all the time. You want to be in the golf business? Great. Let's help you get in the golf business. You spend 5 years in sales on the hotel side and want to shift over, or you want to, learn different skills. We're there to support you, because there are so many different opportunities, and we're running 20 different businesses in one, right? With various levels of expertise and discipline, and everything from IT to engineering to construction to food and beverage, you name it. So
and not only that, but like just to use Camelback again as an example, that's super complex because it's a multi-season resort that's got a lot of outdoor recreation. So there's some days that you're going to be closing down the ski part for the year, and then I think you have an outdoor water park as well, for example, right? So there's a lot of moving parts. That's more complicated because you probably have different groups of people, because somebody who's a ski instructor isn't necessarily going to be a lifeguard, right?
And one thing happens real quick, Scott. One thing happens in resorts like that, most resorts, think of it like a Formula One race or a Daytona race where the car in front stops, right? Everybody else crashes into them. So the maintenance, the construction, the development, the front desk, the housekeeper, the uniforms, designers, once they stop, everything else stops. And that's the hardest part of running those type of resorts.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. So, one of the things that is you are, the asset managers for the Outrigger portfolio, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But I want to talk a little bit more about the overall resort market that you're seeing right now. Obviously, the last couple of years has been absolutely phenomenal. How are you pegging it for the summer this year, the remainder of this year? And I see you're doing a lot of upgrades to properties. How are those reflecting where you think consumers are going to be this year and next year and beyond?
Yeah, good question. I mean, putting aside some of the pretty significant weather impacts we've had at the beginning of the year, certainly out in the West Coast and California, which is hopefully not coming around any.
Well, listen, I was out there in Southern California last week for the California Lodging Investment Conference, and temperature in the 50s, that was insulting to me. I felt really bad for the Southern California people, but continue, please.
Look, I think breaking into a couple of buckets on the corporate side and the group side, we are seeing good velocity of lead volume. So that's encouraging. Sales teams are full, which is nice to see. And there's a good cadence of activity there. So optimistic about the future. Some of our properties that have more substantive group business have done, very well over the last, 12 months and are moving in the right direction. As it relates to leisure markets, still strong, still a lot of activity, a little softening here and there, again, putting aside weather issues, but we're focused on, the long run. We've invested in, all levels of the cycle. So we're very focused about where we're trying to take these properties versus necessarily what they are today. So we're spending hundreds of millions of dollars across the system and capital improvements and master planning, really at just about every single property. Generally, if we acquire a business or a property, there's some amount of capital that's going to be invested in that first 24 months. And I think
Right. So let me just explain one quick thing that younger people might understand, how the hotel industry in theory is a cyclical business. And that means that everything that goes up must come down. And, you know, we usually we had an incredible run up, I think, of 112 months of increased profitability before the pandemic. And then we hit a rock bottom. Before that, we had a great run up, and then the financial crisis came, and that kind of changed everything. So things get better. And then other circumstances come into the industry that kind of resets things, and we kind of go around again. So if you're ever out there and you hear at a conference, what inning are we in? That's what they're referring to. Scott, sorry about that. Just wanted to clear that up. Anthony, you were going to ask a question?
And this one feels like a double header that doesn't end. But how many, if any, brands do you have within your portfolio?
So we currently have a Marriott Autograph, a Sheraton brand that we manage with our Partners Capital.
Well, this is I'm here not standing in front of a Marriott, I believe, correct?
Correct. Yeah. And then we asset manage the Fairmont Grand Del Mar and, as we mentioned, the Outrigger Group.
Right. So what are you looking for when you're looking for a property that has your brand? I'd imagine when you see a property that has, whether it be Autograph or other brands, you're kind of hesitant. And so what are the things you're hesitant about? And what does it take for you to get involved with a brand? Because when you have your resources and you have your talents in your organization and you have your sales force, what's the upside of potentially working with a brand?
Sure. You know, if you maybe start and go back to the roots of the company, as we just discussed, those were all independent, large, iconic resorts.
Yes.
And you know, with that came a lot of interesting opportunity. And as we progress, though, if you look at our portfolio today, it's a lot more diverse than it was 20 years ago, because we do have large properties independent, small properties independent. We've got some brands, and what we've worked on through the years is kind of how to crack the code on what's the best way to work with that brand, with their system, you know, by supplementing some of our, you know, disciplines and skill sets. By way of example, we have a national sales system. Okay. Well, if we can send leads to a property, even though it's a Marriott Autograph or managed by Fairmont, asset managed by us, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
If we can provide incremental business that they're not getting to, but that takes a conversation.
Right.
And that's all about relationship and making sure that people know their roles and they feel comfortable with that. And look, we don't care who takes the credit. We just want the business of the property. Right. And also, you know, revenue management tools. We spend quite a bit of time with the properties and the various brands diving deeper into the analytics. And what we found is, look, if you have good data and you put that in front of smart people, I don't care which brand they're with, they're going to get it, that will hopefully help them in, you know, getting more attention to opportunity areas, whether that be on the brand side or our side, and helping in future capital plans, which we're very involved with. And again, looking at, you know, even though there may be a brand there, how do we influence that or drive that to a higher level of performance with our tools and systems and our capital plans?
So, you know, when I grew up in operations, and then I started getting involved in deals in different parts of the business. And as I started learning about deals, and I was an asset manager for Tishman, and I saw how all this went down because I didn't understand it. It's fascinating to me. So maybe explain to the people that don't know, not only the younger generation, but people that are just
like probably me.
People, well, not even people that are regionals and general managers don't understand really what you look for in a deal. Yeah. So I'm going to ask you a very specific question, and then maybe you can talk about how you think of a deal. Have you ever seen a deal that everybody fell in love with, and you know it was, you know, it's operating okay? So, you know, you hate when something's operating well and you're paying a decent price for it because you're like, there's not a lot of upside.
Right.
But have you ever fell in love with a property that's doing okay, and you say, you know what, we love this. This is right for us. But for some reason it didn't work out? Because those are properties that, you know, are difficult to buy when it's running well and it's a decent price, but you think you can have some upside. Is there anything you can share with us with any examples of something like that?
You know, I think we've always been drawn to the more complicated, and again, you know, prided ourselves on being able to figure it out. and look at it through a different lens. So, most of the time, if we're in love with it and the pricing's right, we're pursuing it actively. We haven't had many that we just that fit.
Yeah, but when you're in love with it, you're in love with it because it got hit by a Mack truck and you want to fix it.
Yeah.
But my point being is, if you ever seen something that it needs a little touch up, but it's a decent price and we'll take it, but you're like, you stay away from those deals. Or you're just looking for significant upside, or there are deals that you can bring into your portfolio because I'm sure you have different funds that are like, okay, this is going to pop a certain number, and then in 3 years we're going to get rid of it.
Yeah, look, we have our targets and standards relative to returns that we've got to underwrite to, right? So we're always staying within those guidelines and trying to overachieve, to that. I don't want to just meet, objectives. I want to exceed objectives, and looking at the complexity of the asset, but importantly, can we take that asset to a lead position in the market?
Mm-hmm.
And does it have legs and longevity relative to its value proposition in the market? And generally, when we're buying things, there's always, some combination of issues that need to be fixed relative to people, product, and positioning, right? Some element to that. And it's a little bit different puzzle each time.
Mm-hmm.
But no major examples I can give you that we've kind of fit.
People always asking. I'm sorry. People always ask me when I'm looking at a property that needs to be redeveloped, or I was like, it comes down to typically people, processes, technology, and money. There's really, if you do those, like, I don't know what else there is. And, and I'm sure after a period of time, you stop saying, wow, they really don't know what they're doing. You just look at it and go, okay, that's just another one. But to us, it's so easy. And we know it's hard. But what we have to do is relatively, like, we know what to do. It's just doing it. It takes the resources and the money and the talent. And it's just amazing how many people get into the business that are experienced and just understand. They'll look at the money and go, we got the money, but they don't have the talent. Or they have the talent, but they don't have the resources. And then they drive the talent away. It's just really, like I said, it's always fun. And it's always complex.
Oh, look, you cannot succeed without good talent, right? You've got to have the right people in the right role.
I've been doing it pretty long on this podcast. There's only one of us have talent, and I don't know. We've been doing it.
We share the talent. We're each talented half the time.
Look, I think speed of implementation is important
right.
in these businesses, right? You got to get it rolling. We just purchased the group in the Central Coast. We're well down the path in terms of our thinking and our planning and our scope and our positioning and how do we execute that? And because time is money, right? And
if you look at the quarterback being the general manager, the quarterback just can't throw the pass. The quarterback's got to be able to take a hit, give a hit, and run. And if your general manager can't be that person, in those kind of things, when you turning them around, it gets really, really difficult, and you start to see, you start to see the flaws. I'm sorry, Glenn. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I'm just curious because I go to all these hotel industry events year after year after year, and all the operators there are so great. And it's got me thinking, Scott, the further along we go in time and the more sophisticated people are, one of the things I say on stage a lot is that we do 98% of the stuff the same. It's that last 2% that makes a difference. With everyone being such great professionals, maybe I'm wrong, but is it becoming harder to find those deals where a property's just not running the right way and you can get in there and find that upside? Or do you have to kind of compromise and say, all right, it's not as bad as we were hoping, but we can still get some value out of this? Any clarity to what I'm saying there?
No, we still find them.
That's great. Good for you. Look at Anthony laughing over there.
Because when you asked the question, I was like, dude, I could do Hotel Impossible for the rest of my life.
Right.
You always find those hotels.
Yeah, they are there. And there's always, again, some combination of antiquated systems or lack of capital or lack of innovation. And they're there. And we see it frequently. But I too, sometimes I'll see these properties and you get in there and just go, wow, there's been no progression in some areas, and they're a little bit behind. But there's a variety of reasons for that, and But therein lies the opportunity for us in terms of creating something special.
So when you
And
talk about
Glenn-
opportunity and creating something special, when you took over the Outrigger portfolio, what were you thinking? And to me, it looks like you're unlocking a lot of value in there right now. And I think you're going to be moving that brand to a lot more locations. But how are you see that story coming together?
That was really a fantastic opportunity. As you know, company developed, 70 years owned by the Kellogg family, really pioneers in that, Hawaii travel market and bringing that experience to, millions in the mainland in particular, and then opening up the international markets. So to us, it's rare, frankly, that you get those opportunities. Something of that scale, a global platform, very successful, but in need of the plan to maintain its relevancy for the next 70 years, which is, comes with, capital investment in systems and processes. So we were thrilled to get that opportunity. And as mentioned, I moved over there for about 18 months, working with the team and handling the transition.
Sounds amazing.
As interim CEO there. So step one, systems, processes, information, technology, also looking at longer term capital plans. A lot of the assets needed capital improvement, and we've done some fantastic renovations over there. Just launched the Outrigger Reef product, which is beautiful. The Beachcomber.
The Outrigger in Honolulu, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you put something like $60 or $80 million into reinventing that property. That property historically has been there for a really long time, and it probably needed it. But when I was there last July, I mean, home run. The only thing that wasn't open yet was that brand new Oceanside restaurant, which I'm sure is there right now.
Correct. And that is the Outrigger Reef right on the beach, on the main strip there off Kalakaua. About $80 million in total investment. Beautiful job. And Monkey Pod being the restaurant going into that facility, which, great partnership there. But also, the Beachcomber, where we spent, about $40 million on that property. And team did a great job there with the Beachcomber Originals and really integrating, a lot of the local culture, whether that be music or art or food, and done a really good job there. And we're always looking at that through the lens of, our responsibility to, again, maintain the relevancy, educate the consumer, hopefully provide an experience that gets that consumer vested and interested in the culture and in the indigenous qualities of that. What works in Waikiki doesn't necessarily work in Miami.
That's absolutely right.
And that's always a very important part of the discussion. So Outrigger, a lot of things going on there. Jeff Wagner, our CEO there, doing a great job with the team. We've, as you mentioned, acquired Kona Resort. That's under renovation now. The Ohana East is under renovation. We've acquired some additional properties in Thailand. They're busy. Lots of good things over there.
Yeah, so I'd like to talk about Kona for 1 second.
Just for a second.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Go for it, Anthony. Yeah.
And don't forget your thought. But I think it's really important when you're talking about conversions and you're talking about investment. One of the things that I kind of geek out on is when you're talking, all I'm seeing is a bunch of asset managers with lots of forms, lots of P&Ls, lots of performers, a lot of the capital books. And then I see designers, and then I see architects, and then I see the marketing vision. And then there's so much that goes into it that no one ever sees. So when you say, well, we invested $80 million, I want to open the hood a little bit and say, yes, we did. But there's so many people behind that $80 million to ensure that $80 million turns into X amount of dollars. So, I mean, how big is a team when you're looking at $80 million investment to one of those projects? How big is the team? Who's on the team?
Right. Great question. So, in Outrigger's case, we'll use that as a more recent example. One of the things we had to do on the front end was understand the possibility of each building, because you've got some older buildings up and down the strip there. And so we spent quite a bit of time with an architecture firm we hired out of San Francisco called Hart Howerton. And then you've got a development group on our side that's, a half a dozen people or so. We've got a stable of different designers and architects that we use, but, really trying to understand what we have and what's kind of the art of the possible is really key on the front end, and getting buy-in internally on what that scope looks like. And we spend a lot of time on defining that scope to make sure that that's lining up with the future positioning opportunity to meet those financial goals. So you've got all those different components, as well as obviously our analysts and our deal teams and our finance group. And also then on the people side, as we talked about, how are we going to execute this? What are the right resources that we need to get in? And it is, to your point, it's a complex process. There's a lot of moving parts, and you've got to keep that moving forward. We recently added another senior staff member to our team, a very talented guy as a senior vice president of our development group in the West. Mm-hmm. And the ultimately, again, we want to make sure that when we're done with that project, it is meeting not just our financial objectives, but it's providing a very relevant experience to the consumer, and that consumer not just being the leisure or group guest that goes there, but also that local community. We want them to be proud of it. Yep. We want them to visit. We want them to support it. And if we do that right, and things are all humming along nicely, that business is going to work hard and provide the experiences and returns that we need.
Right. That's cool. So I wanted to talk about the Kona Resort, which I'm going to be bringing up here real quick. I had a chance to see it, and it was all to me about what you said, art of the possible, because you hadn't yet touched that property. And it was about to, you were all talking about how it was going to be reinvented. And it's one of those properties that has such great bones in an irreplaceable location. So how do you go into something like that is going to work, but you actually got to modernize it and bring it into today's audience? If you'd use this property as a little bit of an example, because the pool areas were phenomenal. Everything was phenomenal about it, except it just needed some love.
No, you're right. And with that assessment, again, comes keen focus on, what's that positioning and the value proposition, and what's the storyline there? What is the experience that we're providing? How do we have to execute on the cultural programs, to the authenticity of the F&B programs, to the sustainability issues, things that are really important to today's consumer.
That's right.
And especially working in Hawaii, like that, the culture in Hawaii and the community in Hawaii, like they will hold you to a very high standard.
Absolutely. And again, we look at, the experience throughout the campus, and again, how we fit into the overall community and that destination, and doing our part in terms of, making a great experience for the visitor. And you're right, I think in Hawaii, it's significantly important. People want to explore, they want to understand, they want to be educated, they want take-home value. And we work hard at that, and have a great team with the Outrigger Group that leads that charge.
Scott, one of my sons took a Hawaiian language class while there, had an absolutely great time. You guys are putting big money into properties all over that you operate right now. I mean, $88 million into that Sheraton or something, I believe, as well. So with all of this money, how are you seeing the financing industry right now, and how is that relevant to what you're able to accomplish with reinventing some of these hotels?
Sure. Yeah, the financing market has had its challenges over the certainly the last 6 months. That said, when we underwrite these assets, we are looking at the rollout of that capital. We're taking those things into consideration. We're focused on the operations and the cash flow. There's a lot of different components that go into that. And we're always looking to try to execute that capital plan within the first 24 months. So, and look, just a positive comment on the overall KSL enterprise. We have a good track record, and with that good track record comes more lenders willing to do things with us, and more credibility.
That's a great point.
Lender and broker community, and we take that very seriously. And as mentioned, have been able to invest and succeed through all levels of the economy and market, because at the end of the day, we're focused on the operations and cash flow and operational improvement, and providing a great experience, not just financial engineering to get a deal done.
So how does the cost and capital that's been increasing as the Fed's been pushing up rates changing your strategy at all, if at all when it comes to acquisitions and redevelopments?
Sure, it puts pressure on the underwritings for sure,
Yeah.
right? And combine that with supply chain issues, cost of construction, labor. I mean, those definitely are putting pressure on those capital execution plans and how much you're putting in relative to contingency, and realistic timelines to execute those plans.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But that just goes back to making sure that you have really tight plans and tight communication within your system. And I think we have that. The decision-making committees are generally on the smaller side, so it's not designed by committee. And we have a plan. We invest a lot of time in our investment thesis and have multiple levels of the process before we make that final investment. So by the time we do that, generally everyone's aligned and what the plan is, and we get after it.
Cool, Anthony.
Yeah, I was just going to say back to what you said, like if you say 24 months to put that capital to work, those are the critical times. That's when the stress gets real, because there's money sitting there, there's interest that has to be paid, and there's certain deadlines when that money's got to start working. And when those delays happen, everything starts to break. So, that is a critical component of, okay, yeah, we can get the money, but can we really execute it in the time period we need to execute it to get the return on that investment? And again, all the things you're talking about are all things that I geek over. I love it. It's part of my DNA, but it's because to me, everybody's got to be in fifth gear. Nobody can be mediocre. In that chain of events, there is no mediocrity, and communication is critical. If there is a problem, one of the things, this is another thing that I don't think we talk enough about in organizations. When somebody makes a mistake or something's not going to happen, everybody knows that everybody hates to deliver bad news. I don't enjoy delivering bad news, but I'm good at it because I don't want to get nailed for it. So the quicker I tell you the bad news, the quicker you stop blaming me and saying, hey, let's just deal with it. So how do you break down those barriers when you're the key guy, you're making all this happen with your team, but then people don't like to deliver bad news to you or to your team? Like how do you flush that out? And I'm sure you've had situations where, as I say, you had to promote people to customer because they weren't communicating properly.
No, look, I think you're right, and those are sometimes challenging conversations, but it comes back to culture and alignment of ownership and management. So in our system, my senior team across the entire KSL enterprise generally has a stake in each one of the businesses that we're dealing with, and in many cases making equity investments. And so we're aligned from the front end. So at the end of the day, we're all looking for the same objectives and working towards the same goal. So I think that helps, because people aren't running for cover. They know we need to get this done. We need to have good communication. And it's certainly been challenging over the past, 24 months, certainly in these projects with availability of contractors and costs and or even, getting a bid with any shelf life to it.
Meaning that somebody will put out a bid and then a month later it's not relevant anymore because the prices have been escalated.
Exactly. And look, that's getting it's definitely getting better.
Yeah.
But as you know, rarely do things come back down in terms of.
However, good news with the price of shipping a container from China to over here. I just saw a story where it's gone from 20,000 for a couple of years ago down to about $1,628 per container. Shanghai is like stacking them up. There's like 7 major ports in China right now. They're also desperate to send stuff out that the pricing is finally back in our hands, which is nice in that regard. But are you moving some of your shipments and stuff away from China? Are you looking to get products and services here in the United States or Mexico, or at least somewhere closer to not depend on certain countries and locations in the world?
Sure. And we're always looking at it. Historically, we've always tried to, if we can buy local and be competitive, then we'll do so. And we have to, just by default, look at lots of different sources, some of the ones that you've mentioned for sure. And we like those longer term relationships. Those vendors that can really step up for us when we need it. We want to treat them well in the long run, and we've had good success with some of the domestic vendors, and it's important.
Yep,
that's a good point. There was a tremendous opportunity to build great will, whether it be companies that try to keep their employees, whether it be vendors that say, listen, this is my upside. I'm not going to charge you anything. I'll even take it in shorts on some of these products. Those relationships, you had such an opportunity. Companies had such an opportunity to really think about the next 10 or 20 years of their business and really be a hero, or at least do, practice fair business practices and be honest and clear. I think, and the people that did it, and the people that were greedy are going to get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, agreed. Scott?
Well, yeah, and we talked about a few of the projects, in Hawaii as an example, or in San Diego. So, during the thick of COVID and the decreased business, we're moving ahead with those projects. That was an opportunity for us. Those capital projects were planned. We were ahead of them from a supply chain standpoint, and frankly, we were creating jobs in a very difficult time. When the industry had, pulled back and closed down a lot of operations. We were able to provide jobs for a lot of our people, and certainly those local communities through the construction trades at an important time. And we feel good about that.
Yeah, awesome. Andy, got any other questions for our friend over here?
No, it's an absolute pleasure. And listen, this podcast is about teaching people about the business, not just talking about it and kind of enjoying our conversations. And I think this was very educational.
Well, I really enjoyed it. Appreciate you having me, and best of success, for all of us in the industry.
Thank
We
you.
got to keep working hard and bringing that fresh talent in and educating people, and we're pleased to be a part of that broader community.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Scott. And I hope to see you soon on a zip line at the Camelback.
Scott, are you going to be at Hunter? Are you going to be at Hunter?
I am not.
You're going to be at NYU, I bet, though, in June, right?
Possibly.
Yeah.
We have a lot of players that go to that conference. But
all right.
Thanks again for having me. And
thank you, sir. We appreciate you. Have a great afternoon. Well, that was fun. I've been dying to talk to the KSLA people.
I could tell, like you seem more excited than normal, and you don't usually get excited.
Yeah, you know me. I'm very refined. I'm not passionate nor excited about anything. Well,
are you excited about talking to me every day or no?
No, not so much. One thing I am excited about, though, it's when people download the audio version of the podcast. You get that on Apple, iTunes, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, Stitcher, wherever you get your shows. And if you're listening to us right now, walking the dog, taking that jog, commuting to the work, why not watch us when you have a chance on your desktop, laptop, whatever device you have, your phone, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, all those good places. Meanwhile, I'm Glenn. He's Anthony. And remember, you've got one life, so blaze on, and
be kind to yourself.
thanks. And Scott, I see you're still there. Hang out. All right.
Can you walk the dog